What's the latest right-wing ploy? Now listen carefully. What's the October surprise? What's the latest right-wing strategy, Republican strategy, to crash the economy before the election? You know, we thought it was Paul Ryan's budget. Except his budget doesn't have a chance. It's not even going to make it out of its own committee. But it would have laid off, hundreds of thousands more government workers, which would have increased the unemployment rate, which would have made the economy worse. And it would have cut benefits to millions and millions of people, which would have made the economy worse because it would have shrunk up demand and it would have, given huge tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires. So they would have moved even more money into their Swiss banks accounts. But it's not that. I mean, they're trying to do that, right? It's happening in the States, but it's not that. It's war with Iran, in my humble opinion. Now, let me just tell you right up front, this is Conspiracy Theory 101. I could be wrong. But you tell me if this makes sense to you. Because this makes perfect sense to me. And in fact, there are now people out there talking out loud about it, or at least about the secondary effect of it. Yesterday, the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, she's the I don't know if her title is chairperson or president or whatever it is. She's the head of the IMF. She warned that a military strike on Iran, and think about this, just common sense, it would disrupt oil supplies around the world. When in 1979, when the Shah was overthrown, Iran stopped producing oil, and oil production crashed, oil prices spiked. It was a crisis for Jimmy Carter just before the election. She said that the price of oil would spike 30%. Lagarde said clearly it would be a shock to economies if there was a major shortage of exports of oil out of Iran. Quoting the head of the IMF, a sudden and brutal rise in the price of oil would have serious consequences on the global economy. End quote. You get this? Right now, the lifeblood of our economy runs on oil. The food we eat is basically oil. All of our economic production, from how our food is grown to how our products are manufactured, our pharmaceuticals are made, our infrastructure is constructed, how our workers get to and from their jobs, how we power our homes, it nearly all depends on oil. You say our food is oil? What? What are you talking about? Yeah, it's oil that makes the fertilizer. It's oil that transports the seeds. It's oil that powers the tractors. It's oil that takes the finished, that processes the finished foods. It's oil that actually picks them in most cases. It's oil-powered vehicles. It's oil that takes them to market. It's oil that packages them. This is all oil-fueled machinery, right? It's oil that brings it to the local store near you, and it's oil that powers your car driving home from the store. Right now, Brent crude prices are about $123 a barrel for oil. If it went up 30%, like the head of the IMF says would happen if we or Israel were to attack Iran between now and November, if oil prices went up 30%, that would push it over $160 a barrel. Now, back in 2008, about 5 months before the entire global economy went into a full meltdown, the banksters speculating on oil drove the price up to $147 a barrel. And Jeremy Rifkin pointed out on our program that the price of oil is directly related to the stability of the global economy. In fact, he said whenever the price of oil goes over $140, it will tip the economy of the United States into a depression because we're so dependent on oil. And war with Iran would push the price of oil above that critical $150 mark, forcing the global economy to shut down and plunging the United States into a Great Depression. It happened to George Bush, and it wasn't partisan. It wasn't Democrats sitting around saying, hey, let's make this happen. It was banksters, trying to get everything that they could before the whole thing crashed because they'd built this house of cards on mortgages and on derivatives. They knew it was going to crash. And so it was like, let's get everything we can. So they were pumping oil derivatives as well. And it flipped the election from Democrat to Republican, or from Republican to Democrat, the White House. And if this happens again before the election, then you can kiss President Obama's second term goodbye, which might explain why the political operatives in the Republican Party, I've been trying to figure out, are these people just warmongers, like congenitally? No. They're strategists. And the producers and the talent on Fox so-called news, why are they pushing so hard to force President Obama or force Israel to launch military strikes on Iran? Why? Why is it that, in the face of all kinds of opposition, all the serious observers looking at the Iranian situation, including the two former heads of Israeli intelligence, the former head of Mossad, all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, from the CIA and the NSA to the Air Force defense, military defense, all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies say Iran is definitely not building a nuke. We say it, our military says it, our intelligence says it, the Israelis say it. Nobody says that Iran is building a nuke, except for Fox News and Mitt Romney. Why? And now the head of the IMF says if you have a military strike against Iran, it would not only be unnecessary, but it would have disastrous economic consequences. Oh, that's why Mitt Romney is writing an op-ed in the Washington Post saying that Iran is trying to build a bomb and we have to stop them. People in Iran and Israel are now taking to Facebook to network with each other and build a campaign for peace before their leaders take them to war. Simple fact is that there's not a single shred of evidence that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, or that Iran, even if it built a bomb, would suddenly turn suicidal and use that weapon. In fact, all the American intelligence agencies say the opposite, that this is not a crisis. So what is the problem that the Republicans are in such a hurry to fix by bombing Iran? The problem is President Obama having high favorable numbers going into an election. That's the problem. The last 5 times that oil prices spiked, 1976, 1980, 1992, 2000, and 2008, the party that held the White House and was running for re-election lost that year's election. Every time oil prices spiked. Jerry Ford, Jimmy Carter, George Herbert Bush, Al Gore, and John McCain. Every single time oil prices spiked, the party in the White House changed. Each one's party had the White House when oil prices spiked as it went into the November election, and each one lost in large part because of it. A war in Iran would make it a 6th time. Normally, a U.S. president gets political benefit from going to war, especially before an election. In fact, George W. Bush told his biographer, Mickey Herskowitz, back in 1999, that if he was elected in 2001, he'd start a war with Iraq to get enough political capital to privatize Social Security and hand that $2.5 trillion trust fund over to Wall Street. But in this case, a war with Iran would be a catastrophe, and everybody knows it. And if President Obama gives in to the right-wingers who are using our national security as an excuse to get into a war that's going to bring about another Great Depression in this country, then he will have made one of the dumbest, all-time dumbest, most destructive blunders in American history. We can't afford a war with Iran. And when political propagandists like Mitt Romney and Ricky Santorum say we can, it proves that their allegiance is not to the security of the United States, but instead to their own political ambitions and Mitch McConnell's promise that the Republicans would make Obama a one-term president, and their loyalty to the billionaire campaign donors who've been trying to get President Obama out of office for more than 3 years, and the military-industrial complex that funds them. Would Republicans really try to start a war with Iran just to crash the U.S. economy so Obama would lose the election this year? You betcha. And we've got to be vigilant about it, and we've got to call them out. I am predicting this is what they are trying to make the October surprise for this fall, because every other effort that they've made to try and crash this economy has failed.